Hey, what's up everyone? This is Paperbag Man, and today I'm talking about The Flash. Now, just for everyone to know, I didn't know how I felt going into the movie, to be honest. I didn't know if I wanted to like it or not. You should always go into the movie with an open mind. But of course, this movie had a very troubled production, including a very problematic star in Ezra Miller. And so it kind of made me question if the movie should have even been released or not, especially since they canceled Batgirl for a seemingly less clear reason. Although obviously this movie had more money put behind it. The trailers looked okay. The reviews I had seen at the time were very average. Like, they didn't really give away too much about the movie. They didn't really say it was amazing or horrible. And so I really went into this, I could have been swayed either way. I could have loved it, I could have not liked it. I like the director, Andy Muschietti, his It movies. The second one's not so good, but the first one's good. And yeah, let me just get into it. I just gotta break this. I can do all this introduction I want, but I have to be completely honest here. This movie is one of the worst comic book movies I have ever seen. This movie is genuinely awful on almost every regard, and it's baffling they made this movie. It is mind-boggling that they thought this was a good film and good enough to release. But let's get into it. First off, let's talk about the directing. I have to give Andy Muschietti props. His directing is pretty much what you would expect the look of a comic book movie to look like. It's very bright, very colorful. It's not as bland as Marvel movies. It's not as stylistic as something like a Sam Raimi film, but it still looks good. And honestly, I'm assuming that most of the problems with this film are not his fault. And so what I would say is that I am not looking forward to his Batman movie. It could be good. Who knows? The directing didn't wow me, however. I mean, the fight scenes were nothing really that special. But let's get into the real problem here. The CGI. Now, like I said, I had read some reviews before, and they had said that there was some wonky CGI. And so they kind of made it seem as though there was like one scene with bad CGI. I watched the movie, and the first scene comes, and it's like, all right, that's some bad CGI as the Flash is running through the city. It doesn't look that good. So you have to think, all right, the rest of the movie's going to look good. Nope. It is horrible. It is disgusting. It is awful. It kind of makes you realize that how much CGI is used in films in general, because clearly these effects were not finished. And it makes you wonder, why were these effects not finished? And there's a lot of points where you think, why the fuck didn't they just use real actors or real characters or whatever for this? Recently, an article came out defending the effects. Andy Muschietti, he said he wanted to make it look weird and abnormal. And I kind of understand that in the fact that some of the visuals are very abstract in the way he goes back in time. But it doesn't excuse the fact that when you're just looking at the screen, it just looks like a bunch of horribly rendered computer-generated images. I genuinely want to know what happened. This was DC's big film. This is a movie that they were like their flagship film that they want to make like $1 billion. Why didn't they put more money in the visual effects? Why didn't they finish them? They looks unfinished. I don't understand what happened there. It's so baffling. Now, because this movie obviously incorporates Michael Keaton's Batman, the score incorporates a lot of the classic Danny Elfman Batman score. And so I should say is that even though the normal score for this movie, it's nothing special, it is easy to win me over just hearing that classic score. It's just an amazing. I don't even love those movies that much, but I love that score. And hearing that in the action scenes, it's always a treat. Ezra Miller plays a dual role in this movie. He plays the normal version of the Flash, and he plays a younger version who's just getting his powers and is much more of like a silly hothead and stuff. And it kind of plays on the fact that people find Ezra Miller's performance to be a bit annoying. And so the perfect way to contrast that is to have him annoyed by himself. The gimmick runs out pretty thin, though, towards the end. The dumber Flash just becomes too dumb to reason with. And it just kind of like, Jesus, you're still making these stupid jokes? I mean, come on, we're like 2/3 of the way through this movie. You haven't grown at all, man. It's just annoying, and it's very rarely funny. It doesn't work. They should have really cut out a lot of his humorous beats. The villain is, I guess, a spoiler. So skip to this time if you don't want to spoil it for the rest of the review. Technically, there's two villains. One of them is the other Flash. He turns out to be the villain. And the other one is General Zod, who we see in the trailer. Now, this movie is going to get compared a lot to No Way Home, and it's very similar in that regard. And No Way Home had Norman Osborn, Willem Dafoe's portrayal of the Green Goblin, which he originated in the original Spider-Man movie. And they used that to a really good effect, to where they have him like throughout the movie, and we get to kind of, one, the nostalgic value of seeing him again, and we get to explore his character further. We get to see more done with him. And for this film, they decided to do that with General Zod. Now, of course, this movie is in the production around the same time as No Way Home, so I'm not saying this is copying No Way Home, but you can't help but compare it because General Zod is just extremely underused. Now, of course, Michael Shannon's portrayal is not as remembered as well as Willem Dafoe's, but if you go back and watch Man of Steel, he's kind of the highlight of that movie. He really kicks ass in that movie. It's really good, really solid stuff. But he's extremely underused in this film. His storyline really has no resolution. What's real is the main villain is, I guess, the other Flash of this universe. The younger Flash, he turns out to be the bad guy because he wants to not have his mom die. Like, that's literally the motivation. It's kind of absurd. You have to think from his point of view. He had all these memories of his mother, and then this guy comes in, ruins his life for one day, and basically tells him, yeah, I'm gonna go and practically kill our mother who you've had all these memories with. Like, I'm on his side. This is a moral tale for the original Flash from the original universe, but for this new guy, yeah, of course he's gonna stop him. Like, what do you expect? This wouldn't have been a problem if the older Flash just had to make the choice. We didn't have like a literal representation of him being the younger guy being an evil bad guy, you know. If we just don't tell him, don't tell him that side of it, and it's fine. Problem solved. It's just, it's so weird that the movie wants us to root against a guy whose only motivation is that his mother doesn't want to die. It's absurd. The side characters. Supergirl is great, but she's underused, severely underused. Why didn't they have her in more of the film? And also, like General Zod, and they're very obviously connected, their storylines are just not in the film at all. And I guess she dies because they erase her timeline. And also, that means Michael Keaton's Batman dies, because they also released, he's also in that timeline. Michael Keaton was in the trailers heavily promoted in the film. It kind of seemed like he was going to be the second lead, but he isn't. He is very much a sidelined character in this, and it's so weird because Michael Keaton is still a big star. Like, he still headlines movies, but in this movie, he is so just like in the background. Like, he didn't even need to be in the movie, really, everything he contributes to the plot is purely circumstantial. I would have liked to see Michael Keaton playing older, grizzled Batman. I mean, when he's doing all those fight scenes, he pretty much acts as though he's still like that young guy from the 80s. Wouldn't it be cooler if he was older and he was having a hard time doing things? And also, wouldn't it be cooler if it reflected the fact that in the old Batman and Batman Returns, he really couldn't fight as well as superheroes can now? It was very limited in what he could do. Bring that back, make a joke about it. I mean, geez, so many wasted opportunities in this movie. This is... Holy, I haven't been this shocked by how bad a movie was since the third Fantastic Beasts movie, which also has Ezra Miller. And so, yeah, the resolution of this movie concludes with Michael Keaton's Batman dying, basically, because they have to destroy that timeline, which is what is implied, which means Michael Keaton's Batman just no longer exists. If that's what you want to take away from it, I mean, you just have to kind of take away from the fact that this isn't even the original Michael Keaton Batman. Because if it is, then there is the implication that he's dead. And if it isn't, then it's not even that cool that he's in this movie, because it's just Michael Keaton playing a version of Batman. It's not playing his iconic portrayal of Batman. It's all so silly. The story is not original. It's not. Especially for when it's coming out. I mean, it's funny, if this movie came out when it was originally intended to, it would have beat every other movie in terms of the multiverse trend that's going on right now. But since the production had such a hellish development, it is now the last in this arms race, which means this concept of a multiverse is so not fresh, and it by far uses it the weakest out of Everything Everywhere at Once, No Way Home, and the Spider-Verse movies. It's really sad that Across the Spider-Verse happened to come out a couple weeks before this movie, because the disparity in quality really shows. I mean, in the Spider-Verse movies, the multiverse is built into the plot. And in The Flash, it feels like a complete afterthought. I mean, holy shit, that last scene where we're seeing Christopher Reeve's Superman and Adam West Batman and Nicolas Cage's Superman, it was so weak. I mean, it was just the most desperate call for fan service, the most desperate attempt to get fans cheering in the theater. The Nicolas Cage one specifically, that's such a deep cut. No one will even get that. No one even knows that Nicolas Cage was going to play Superman in an alternate universe, except for hardcore fans. And also, it would have been a lot cooler if you actually got Nicolas Cage in the room to play Superman. But you didn't. You instead just had a CGI Nicolas Cage. So what's even the point? What am I cheering about? That you were able to make a CGI replication of Nicolas Cage? Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit that you can have a CGI shitty Christopher Reeve standing next to a CGI shitty Supergirl? Who gives a fuck, man? The movie is not paced very well. A lot happens. A lot is thrown at you in the first act of the movie. And a lot is thrown at you in the third act of the movie. And in the second act, nothing happens. This movie suffers from a big case of second act sag. Just a lot of characters sitting around talking. Just characters going back and forth from one location. It's I don't want to do this. They go somewhere. It's you know what? Actually, I do want to do this. Just, it's very boring. It's very boring for those parts. And then the first and third one, it's going by so fast that you're having a headache because it's just too much is happening at once. The movie, it can't win. It cannot win. The theme of the story is extremely depressing. One, it is an extremely depressing ass message that this film has, where Barry has to basically decide, oh yeah, I'm gonna let my mother die. By the way, I just want to go back to my point earlier about the villain. Why wasn't Reverse Flash the villain? Just make him the villain. He was the villain in the comics. He's his villain. We don't even know who murdered his mother. It's such an afterthought. Get rid of Zod and make Reverse Flash the villain. That will give him so much more conflict in the final battle. In this final battle, I don't really, there's just not a lot of personal conflict. Supergirl has more personal conflict at stake because she has a personal connection with the villain. The Flash has no personal connection to this villain, except for an arbitrary backstory where they say that he was there during the events of Man of Steel, but that's it. I'm kind of jumping back and forth here, but also Barry doesn't learn his lesson. Okay, you're gonna have this depressing ass theme for a superhero movie. You know, superhero movies are supposed to be upbeat and fun, and you have this really depressing message that he just has to let his mother die. Which is fine. If you're gonna own it, but then he doesn't even do that. He changes history again so that his father has to look up, which means that he's on the security tape, which means that his alibi works and he'll be out of prison. Which means, yeah, like, he just fucked up again. What was even the fucking point? And then we do see that there's some history change, of course. It's fucking George Clooney. George Clooney, like, it was so weird. I feel like he was given no direction. He's told to react, but he kind of reacts with a weird smile. It's the worst bit of fan service, and it didn't work. Like, this movie had potential to be really good, but it wasn't. I don't know what James Gunn is smoking if he thinks it's one of the best superhero movies ever. I think he's being paid to do that. Or James Gunn loves a lot of heart, and there's a lot of attempts at heartful moments in this movie. It just doesn't really come together, does it? No. Holy shit. Thank God this universe is coming to an end. They don't know what to do with it. Aquaman 2 doesn't... I mean, it could be good. I don't hate anyone involved in it. Oh, Amber Heard, I guess. But I don't hate it. Do I hate it? That's kind of a strong word, but I don't know. Either way, I don't know. I didn't like the first Aquaman. Second Aquaman could be good. You know, Justin, the director of it, who directed Fast and Furious 7 and Saw, he could do a good job. He's a good director. Like, visually, the movie was good. I just thought the script wasn't so great. So maybe if they nailed down the script, it'd be really good. Blue Beetle does not look good. Looks like a TV movie and has TV movie level effects. And then that's it. Yeah, that's it. And then it's James Gunn's universe. Yeah, I did not like this one. I'm giving this movie a 4 out of 10. Thank you very much.